Neutrinos and AI.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like these two things might not seem immediately connected,
Right.
but researchers at DUNE, the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment,
Okay.
they're using AI to get like a super detailed look at how neutrinos interact.
Wow, so this is cutting-edge stuff.
Definitely. They published a paper about it, and that's what we're diving into today.
Sounds fascinating.
Oh, it is. So, to set the scene, picture this. A giant tank
Okay.
filled with liquid argon.
Liquid argon.
Yeah, that's their detector. And neutrinos, these tiny, like almost massless particles, they're flying through it.
Okay, I'm picturing it. A giant tank of liquid argon neutrinos zipping through.
Right. Now, every once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
a neutrino will actually bump into an argon atom.
Oh, so they're looking for that collision.
Exactly. And when that happens, it creates a spray of other particles.
Okay, so how do they actually see this?
Well, that's where it gets really cool.
All right.
See those particles from the collision? They ionize the argon.
Oh,
And that leaves a trail of electrons.
I see.
And the detector, it's got all these wires that can detect those electrons as they drift.
Like a trail.
Yeah, exactly. So you get this 3D snapshot of the interaction. It's called a LArTPC, Liquid Argon Time Projection Chamber.
LARTPC. Okay, got it.
So they've got this giant 3D camera capturing these trails.
Mm.
But how do they make sense of it all?
Yeah, good question.
Well, that's where Pandora comes in.
Pandora. Like the music app.
Haha, no, it's a software they use.
Oh, yeah.
And it reconstructs what happened in the tank. Like it uses algorithms to figure out
Okay.
the paths of the particles, kind of like connecting the dots.
So they can trace the particles back to their origin.
Exactly.
And that's the interaction vertex.
You got it. That's the exact spot where the neutrino hits the argon atom.
So why is that so important to find?
Because even a tiny error there
Yeah?
can really mess things up. Like all the calculations, the energy, everything.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. So getting the vertex right is super important.
Okay, so how are they using AI for this?
Well, the traditional method was to like group the hits together.
Okay.
But this new AI technique analyzes each individual hit
Huh.
and figures out how far it is from the true vertex.
So instead of grouping first, they look at each piece of evidence individually.
Yeah, like a detective carefully examining everything.
Got it. So what kind of results are they seeing with this AI method?
Well, it's actually outperforming the old methods. In some cases, it's over 80% accurate.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, but there are still some limitations, like some types of neutrino interactions are harder to reconstruct.
Really, why is that?
Well, it works best when the interaction produces a charged lepton, like a muon or an electron.
Oh, because they leave a clearer trail.
Exactly. It's like having footprints leading right to the scene.
Got it. So if there's no charged lepton, it's tougher.
Yeah, the AI has to rely on other particles which might not be as clear.
Like a crime scene with no witnesses, no footprints.
Aha, yeah, exactly.
It sounds like a real challenge.
It is. So even though this AI vertex reconstruction is a big step forward,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a lot to figure out. And one of the big takeaways from the paper
Yeah.
is just how important the simulations are.
Oh, how so?
Well, the AI's performance is tied to how good those simulations are.
Right.
If they're not accurate, it's like training a detective using fake crime novels.
Ha, that makes sense.
So to get the most out of the AI, they need to keep improving those simulations.
So better physics leads to better AI.
Exactly. And that leads to a better understanding with neutrinos.
All connected.
Yeah, it's this really cool interplay between technology and fundamental science.
Absolutely. So what do you think? Where should we go from here with this deep dive?
Well, I think it'd be interesting to dig deeper into those simulations.
Okay.
And see how they actually work, what assumptions they're based on, and how those might affect the AI's performance.
Right, because those assumptions could lead to biases.
Exactly, and that could have implications for the results.
So understanding the limitations of the simulations is crucial.
Absolutely, it's like knowing the potential weaknesses of your detective.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, let's take a closer look at those simulations and see what we can learn.
Sounds like a plan.
And maybe later we can even talk about some of the bigger mysteries that neutrinos might help us solve.
Like dark matter.
Exactly. But first, let's dive into those simulations.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so simulations, they're like the backbone of this whole AI approach to neutrino detection.
Yeah, they're crucial, but they're also kind of a black box to most people.
True. Even for physicists sometimes.
So let's crack open that box and see how they work.
All right, so imagine you're trying to predict how a neutrino will behave when it slams into an argon atom.
Okay, I'm
You
imagining.
can't just watch it happen in real time. It's way too small and fast.
Right, it's all happening at the subatomic level.
Exactly. So you need a model, a way to simulate the interaction.
And that's where these neutrino interaction generators come in.
Right. These are sophisticated software programs that essentially create a virtual world.
A virtual world of neutrinos.
Exactly. They use all kinds of physics equations and parameters to simulate how particles interact.
Okay, so they're like a video game, but for particle physics.
Haha, in a way, yeah. They generate a ton of data about the particles, their energies, trajectories, everything.
And this is what the AI is trained on, right?
Exactly. The AI learns to recognize patterns in this simulated data.
So it can then analyze real data from the detector.
Right. But here's the thing. The accuracy of the AI depends heavily on how good those simulations are.
Right, like we were saying earlier, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. If the simulations are based on inaccurate assumptions or if they're missing certain types of interactions, the AI will inherit those limitations.
So the AI only is good as the model it's trained on.
Precisely. And that's what the DUNE researchers were investigating in this paper. They wanted to see how sensitive their AI model was to the specific details of the simulation.
So they were testing the robustness of their AI.
Exactly. They ran a bunch of experiments, tweaking the settings of the simulation and seeing how the AI's performance changed.
Okay, so what kind of tweaks did they make?
Well, one thing they did was remove all the low-energy protons from the simulation.
So they were basically making the simulation less complex.
Right. They wanted to see how much information the AI really needed to accurately reconstruct the vertex.
And what did they find?
Well, for charged current interactions, where you have a charged lepton leaving a clear track, the AI was pretty robust. It could still pinpoint the vertex fairly accurately, even without those low-energy protons.
So like we were saying before, having that charged lepton is a big help.
It's like having a smoking gun at the crime scene.
Makes it easier to connect the dots.
Exactly. But for neutral current interactions, where there's no charged lepton, the impact was much bigger.
So without those extra protons as clues, the AI struggled.
Yeah, the rate of those catastrophic failures where the AI completely misidentified the vertex went way up.
Yikes, that doesn't sound good.
No, it highlights how important those additional particles can be for neutral current events.
So it's all about having enough information for the AI to work with.
Exactly. And then they went in the other direction. They made the simulation more complex by replacing all the neutrons with protons.
So they flooded the simulation with charged particles.
Exactly. And as you might expect, the AI's performance improved, especially for those tricky neutral current interactions.
So more information generally leads to better results.
Usually, yes. But there's a catch. They found that if the interactions got too complex, with tons of secondary interactions and overlapping particle tracks, the AI's accuracy actually dipped a bit.
So too much information can actually be a bad thing.
It can be, yeah. It's like trying to listen to a conversation with 100 people talking at once.
You can't make sense of anything.
Exactly. So finding that sweet spot between enough information and too much complexity is key.
So it's all about balance.
Precisely. And it underscores a really important point about AI in general. It's a powerful tool, but it's not magic.
We can't just blindly trust its results.
Right. We need to understand its limitations, the assumptions that go into it, and be critical of its output.
So it's a partnership, really, between humans and machines.
Absolutely. We need to work together to get the most out of these powerful tools.
And it's so cool how these simulations and AI are pushing the boundaries of what we can learn about neutrinos.
It really is. We're starting to see these tiny particles in a whole new light.
And it's making me wonder, what other secrets might they hold? What other mysteries could they help us solve?
Well, there are a few really big ones out there. Like, you know how we were talking about the matter-antimatter asymmetry problem?
Yeah, that one always blows my mind.
Well, neutrinos might actually hold the key to understanding why there's so much more matter than antimatter in the universe.
Really? That's incredible.
It's a long shot, but it's a possibility. And then there's the connection between neutrinos and dark matter.
Dark matter. Now that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, it's a big one. But some physicists think that neutrinos could interact with dark matter particles in ways we haven't observed yet.
So neutrinos could be like our bridge to the dark sector.
Exactly. And if we could detect those interactions, it would be a huge breakthrough.
Wow, it's amazing to think that these tiny particles could be connected to such big mysteries.
It really is. And that's what makes neutrino research so exciting.
So we've got these incredible AI-powered tools, constantly evolving simulations, and a whole universe of mysteries waiting to be solved.
It's a great time to be a neutrino physicist.
Absolutely. And what are you most excited about in this field? What are you keeping an eye on?
That's a tough one. There's so much happening. But I'm really intrigued by the potential of AI to not just pinpoint the vertex, but to extract even more information from the data.
Like what kind of information?
Like, imagine being able to identify the types of particles produced in the interaction, their energies, even the direction the neutrino was traveling.
So it's like having a superpowered neutrino microscope.
Exactly. We could see the subatomic world in incredible detail.
That would be a game changer. And I bet those simulations would be crucial for making that happen.
Absolutely. We need those simulations to be as realistic as possible so the AI can learn to recognize even the most subtle patterns.
It's this constant back and forth, pushing the boundaries of both technology and our understanding of physics.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And it makes me wonder what other breakthroughs might be just around the corner. What will the next generation of neutrino detectors and AI algorithms be capable of?
It's exciting to think about.
It really is. And I think one thing that often gets overlooked is the human element of all this.
What do you mean?
I mean, yeah, we have these amazing machines and algorithms, but it's still people who are asking the questions, designing the experiments, interpreting the data.
So it's still a human endeavor at its core.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so inspiring. It's a testament to human curiosity and our drive to understand the universe.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. We're using these tiny, elusive particles to probe some of the biggest questions in physics.
It's a pretty wild ride.
It is. And speaking of rides, I think we're reaching the end of our deep dive into neutrino vertex reconstruction.
Ah, yes. Time flies when you're talking neutrinos.
But before we sign off, I'd love to hear your final thoughts. What's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
That's a good question. I guess I'd say don't underestimate the power of the small.
I like that. Neutrinos are tiny, but they hold huge potential.
Exactly. They can teach us about the fundamental nature of matter, the origins of the universe, and maybe even the secrets of dark matter.
So even though they're elusive, they're worth paying attention to.
Absolutely. They might just hold the keys to some of the biggest mysteries in physics.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our exploration of neutrino vertex reconstruction. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. And until next time, keep those neutrino detectors running and those AI algorithms humming.
And keep asking those big questions. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of science and technology. So stay curious, folks, and we'll see you next time. So we've been talking about how AI is being used to track neutrinos, but it's not just about pinpointing where they interact, right?
No, not at all. There's so much more we can potentially learn from these particles.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, one area that's really fascinating is the connection between neutrinos and dark matter.
Dark matter. Oh, okay. That's a whole other mystery, isn't it?
It is. It's this invisible stuff that makes up a huge chunk of the universe.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I'll be honest, it always seemed a bit theoretical to me. How could neutrinos, these tiny things we can barely detect, tell us anything about something we can't even see?
It's a bit complex, I'll admit, but some theories suggest that neutrinos might actually interact with dark matter particles, just in ways we haven't been able to observe yet.
So they could be like messengers from this hidden world of dark matter.
Yeah, exactly. And if we could detect those interactions, it would be a huge breakthrough in our understanding of dark matter.
Wow. So are there any experiments actually looking for those kinds of interactions?
Oh, absolutely. There are several experiments around the world that are specifically searching for evidence of dark matter interacting with neutrinos.
And how did they do that? Like, what are they looking for?
Well, one way is to look for excess events in their detectors, things that can't be explained by our current understanding of physics.
So it's like finding an anomaly in the data, something unexpected.
Exactly. It would be a hint that something new is going on, something we haven't accounted for in our models.
So these giant detectors, originally built to study neutrinos, could end up revealing the secrets of dark matter as well.
That's the amazing thing about science, you know? Sometimes the answers to one question can lead to a whole new set of questions and unexpected discoveries.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of neutrino detection to the role of AI in simulations, and now even the potential connections to dark matter.
Yeah, it's been a pretty deep dive for sure.
It has, and for me, one of the biggest takeaways is just how much we still don't know.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what makes it so exciting, right? There's still so much to explore and discover.
Exactly, and it makes me wonder what other breakthroughs might be just around the corner. What new technologies or ideas will help us unlock even more secrets of the universe?
Well, that's the beauty of science, isn't it? It's a never-ending journey of discovery.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed our exploration of neutrino vertex reconstruction. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.